Resident Evil Village is the 8th installment in the Resident Evil main series and the direct sequel to Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. It was released in May 2021 for PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series S/X, and Stadia. Despite the remakes of 2 and 3 coming out around the same time that Village was announced, this was the one I was most excited for. Village continues the story of Ethan Winters after his and Mia's escape from the Baker house. Assisted by Chris Redfield, the couple moved to Europe and got married along with having a baby named Rosemary. On a seemingly normal night, Mia is shot down by Chris and his soldiers. Ethan and Rose are kidnapped by them, and he wakes up after the vehicle they were in crashes and he goes searching for Rose. He finds himself in an unknown village with a giant castle looming in the distance. While wandering around the village, he is ambushed by enemies similar to werewolves and learns more about what is going on. Right off the bat, I was drawn in due to how much it reminded me of Resident Evil 4. I loved Resident Evil 7, but 4 and 5 were the only two I've ever been able to learn to navigate easily and do multiple playthroughs on. I'm not very good at puzzles, as you may know already, and I get stressed out when I'm constantly being pursued by an invincible enemy. So Village looked like the perfect new entry for me to dive into. The remote and desolate feel of the village also caught my attention. Everything about it looked amazing. I don't really watch trailers or read about games that I know I'm already going to want to play because I get anxious from it, so I went in not knowing pretty much anything. The only thing I knew of it was the internet's thirst for Lady Dimatresk, and yeah. Anyway, the gameplay is like a mix of Resident Evil 4 and 7. It has the first-person perspective of 7 and the open world of 4. There are many similarities to 4, but I don't think it's a bad thing. It felt familiar and comfortable to me. There's a lot of new content, but it has a similar formula. You start out in the village where you're ambushed by the generic enemies of the game. I was actually hoping Ethan would make the "Where's everybody going? Bingo" comment that Leon did in 4 or something similar, but he didn't. The briefcase inventory system came back, as did the merchant. However, this merchant is a brand new character. He makes references to the other one though. It's also impossible to kill him, which is a good thing. There are some puzzles, but luckily it's not as hard as the older games. I played it on casual difficulty though, so maybe that's why. Mother Miranda has 4 lords that you must take down to save Rose, and each one has their own unique area and gameplay style. Lady Dimatresk is a 9-foot-tall vampire-ish lady who lives in an enormous castle with her 3 daughters. They will all stalk you around the castle and are for the most part invincible. It has a very clock tower / haunting ground feel, along with that area in Resident Evil 6 on Leon and Helena's story. Donna Beneviento lives in an old home, House Beneviento, and is a recluse, choosing to interact with others via her dolls. Her stage takes away all of your weapons and forces you to escape the section you're in while avoiding a mutant baby creature. It's described as one of the scariest parts of the game and is reminiscent of Silent Hill and the Resident Evil 7 demo. Salvatore Moreau is a disgusting-looking fish-human hybrid who lives in an isolated reservoir. It's very similar to Del Lago in Resident Evil 4, where you have to traverse around the waters while avoiding being attacked and eaten by the fish monster.
I don't have time for this.
The last lord, Karl Heisenberg, is a twisted genius who lives in a factory creating his own soldiers. His area reminded me a lot of Resident Evil 5, along with the evil within. You go back and forth a lot, not knowing if the stationary enemies you pass will end up chasing you or not. You end up using a turret gun in this section, and even though he's the penultimate boss, Heisenberg is pretty easy to beat. Again, I was playing on casual difficulty though. There are some NPCs that you come across who seem like they'll be important but end up dying almost immediately after you meet them. It is pretty hard to find normal civilians in Resident Evil games, but they're apparently not that bright. The villains themselves are great, very memorable. They have a family dynamic with Mother Miranda, and it's fun watching them interact with each other along with Ethan's apathetic attitude towards them. I liked them a lot because of how much personality they had, and their dialogue was often hilarious. The story is very interesting, and it ties together the very start of Resident Evil with what is going on here. I think it could have done more or better with connecting things, but it is what it is. Oh, and just so you know, if you haven't played it, there isn't really anything supernatural going on. At least not outside of what's normal for a Resident Evil game. It still has viruses and mutations and stuff rather than actual vampires or werewolves. It still sticks to science over magic. The ending was actually very emotional and I almost teared up a bit. People say Ethan is the worst protagonist, but I really liked him. Chris is back to how he should have been in 7, but his voice sounded a bit off. People also say the game is too short, but I finished it in around 10 hours, and that was without exploring everything that I was able to. The original Resident Evil is possible to be beaten in like 1 hour, so come on guys. Speedruns show you can blast through each game if you ignore everything and just keep running forward. After completing the story, Mercenaries mode unlocks, but it plays a bit differently than the normal series one. Ethan is the only playable character, and each stage has a minimum amount of enemies to defeat before you can progress to the next stage. I wish there were other characters to play as, maybe they'll make that an option in the future though. I really enjoyed this game, and it was what I was hoping for. It was a big step up in variety from Resident Evil 7, and I think a lot of fans will love this one. The ending sets up for the 9th game as well. The story isn't over yet. Based on the end scene, I am wary that they might make it into another action game like Resident Evil 6, but hopefully they've gotten enough fan feedback to learn that that's not the best way to go. Thank you for watching the video. Leave a like if you liked it, comment what you thought of the game, subscribe if you want to see more content. Thank you to all my patrons on Patreon. Check out my stuff if you want to, and thank you for watching.